Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So welcome everybody to Wednesday meditation here. Kind of a regular fixture, regular feature at the West End Temple. I think Bhante has been conducting the class for more than 25 years, I think, which is extremely impressive. And so actually met Bhante a few years ago when I first came back to the Toronto area. And I think I said this one time, but when I first met him, we went downstairs to have tea, and he said, "Hey, nice to meet you." And then after like maybe a few minutes, he's like, "I have an agenda for you." So, I was like, "Wait a minute." And he said it several more times. And I was at first very resistant to his agenda, but he eventually pushed me to give talks, for which I'm actually very grateful to Bhante. Bhante is a fixture in our Toronto Buddhist community, and we're lucky to have him here. And so just the other day, was walking back from a bus stop. I was kind of coming from, I usually stay in the more east side of the city, and was coming back from Whitby, and was kind of transferring buses. And as I was going to transfer buses, there was this person who came up and kind of started walking beside me. And he said, "Do you know when the 110 comes? 110B." And I said, I don't know when it comes. I actually know that bus, but I never take it. It goes to a different part of the city. And so then he kept walking, and I thought, okay, at first I thought he was going to ask me about Buddhism, because, as a monk you kind of stand up, but then he kept asking me about the bus, so I kept trying to answer. And then eventually he started to ask me about Buddhism. He's like, "So you're a monk, so what do monks do anyway?" Kind of like, well, think of a Christian priest and think of a Catholic monk, and that's kind of like that. And then he asked me, "So, what do Buddhists believe?" And I said, "Well, Buddhists believe that it's possible to put an end to suffering by training the mind. You can put an end to suffering by training the mind. This is the belief." And then we got to talking a little bit further, and we were standing at the bus stop. It's kind of like a normal bus stop, I guess you'd say. And I said, okay, we can imagine if, say, I wasn't a monk, or you just won the lottery. Won like, $80 million. By the way, as an aside, there's a fellow who lives very close to where my mother lives, and he won $88 million, and he never moved. still lives in the same place. But anyways, that's just a fun aside. But in any event, what I said to him was, just imagine you won the lottery. This bus stop would seem, like something totally amazing. This kind of wonderful bus stop. It's overflowing with happiness to be at the bus stop. And I said, well, imagine instead that either your mother died or my mother died. You'd be sad and upset. Right? My mother's died. The bus stop, standing at the bus stop would seem like something horrible. Being there at the bus stop. But whatever it is, the bus stop is the same. The same garbage can, same, 2 or 3 bus terminals. The bus terminals are nice enough. I mean, they're made out of glass, they have benches, they're good. Kind of a bridge nearby, but that's what it is. That's what's there. But what embellishes that, what makes it a reality, is the person who's perceiving it. The person who's looking at the bus stop is what makes that bus stop for that person. So I remember, many years ago, when I first came to Buddhism, they have all these translations of the Dhammapada, and I think they've got this website now called Fake Buddha Quotes. Kind of fake Buddha quotes. There's all these quotes on the internet that say the Buddha said this, and a lot of them are fake. There's actually one that is kind of funny. It's referring to the Kalama Sutta, and it says, "Follow your own sense of right and wrong, the Buddha." Which the Buddha didn't really say, right? Kind of nice to have that kind of sanction, just do whatever you want. But in any event, all these kind of fake Buddha quotes aside, reading through this Dhammapada when I was first getting into Buddhism, there was this verse that said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts we make the world." Now that's actually a fake Buddha quote. The Buddha didn't actually say that. It's kind of a very loose translation of the Dhammapada. What the Buddha actually said was, that all beings are basically the owners of their actions. So basically, if you do good actions, then happiness follows you like your shadow unshakable. If you do bad actions, then trouble follows you like the wheel follows the ox that follows the cart. But in any event, although it was a loose translation, in a certain sense, it's actually true. There are other suttas where the Buddha refers to people making their own worlds, because who else could inhabit the world that we live in? And so there's this one really interesting sutta actually where this deva comes up to the Buddha. So there's, for those of you who might not be a bit new to Buddhism, in Buddhism, like most religions, we're not the only ones living in the universe. There's also animals, there's also what they call ghosts, and there's also angels, kind of these various beings that live in heaven. And if you read the Canon, or even now in the modern day, some monks who live in the forest have experience with these various beings, and they often come to the Buddha to ask him advice. So there was a deva that came to the Buddha once, and he said, "Lord, is it possible to reach the end of the world by traveling?" And the Buddha says, "I say that's impossible to reach the end of the world by traveling." Has Bhante told you guys this one before? No? In any event, so then the deva says, "It's amazing how well that was stated by the Blessed One, that it's impossible to reach the end of the world by traveling, because in my former life, I was a skywalker by the name of Boja." So, in other words, he may have been a deva, or he may have been a rishi, somebody with psychic powers, but what he says was, my stride was like this. I could step from one side of the ocean to the other. And he said, my speed was like this. It was like the speed, of somebody, in the Canon they use this phrase like shooting an arrow, I think, over the shadow of a palm leaf, which means very fast. It's like a very fast shot arrow. And he said, with this kind of speed and this kind of stride, this desire arose in me, may I reach the end of the world. And may I find the end of the world. The end of the world here basically means the end of the cosmos, not just like our, planet Earth. And find the end of the whole universe. So he said, with a lifespan of 100 years and only stopping to urinate, only stopping to defecate and sleep, I kept traveling. But without reaching the end of the world, I died on the way. And so the Buddha has something further, which is very interesting. He says, although it's not possible to reach the end of the world by traveling, here I'm paraphrasing too, the end of the world is found within this fathom-long body. There's this kind of the end of the world and its end exists within each person's body, you could say. The reason for that is because each person perceives the world. What they know about the world comes through their six senses. It comes through a person's eyes, it comes through their ears, it comes through their nose, it comes through a person's tongue, through their body, and through their mind. All these things make up a person's experience of the world, which is why the Buddha actually calls them the all. This is everything. This is what you can describe. The all, the six senses, what it's possible to sense through the six senses. And to the extent that a person has these six senses, that's where they make their world. That's where they create their world. So there's this kind of, one time I was staying at this monastery in Thailand, And it was a monastery where I was really looking forward to go to, with a teacher who I really respected and was rumored to have reached the end of the Buddhist path. And I think the rumors were true. But in any event, I met a young fellow there who was hoping to ordain. And we got to talking. He was kind of a little dissatisfied staying at that particular monastery. Although it was an excellent monastery, things work out better, people, different places. And so he was planning to leave and go back to the States. And he told me this story. He said, one time when I was in college, I was kind of practicing meditation, and I had this experience where I got absorbed kind of into a jhana. Because jhanas are these states that a person reaches in meditation that are basically an experience of bliss. It goes kind of beyond what a person could have experienced before. And what he... Oh, all right? Okay. And... that's good. Okay? Yeah. I want to keep talking. Yeah? All right. Yeah? Keep going? Okay. So I guess Robert will be looked after. Okay. So in any event, this person, what he said to me was, if I could just get that back, wherever I was, whatever I was doing, I would feel okay. Now, if I could just have that, I could be in my college dorm and be okay. Feeling the same college dorm that he would have been in anyway, but wanted this kind of feeling that he had in his mind. Wanted his world to be the way that it was at that time. And so I remember one time as well when I was young, I kind of used to like to make these kind of swings that you tie a rope to like the edge of a tree branch near a cliff, which for anybody who's thinking about trying that, please don't do that. It's maybe not the best idea. But in any event, we tie these kind of ropes to the end of a tree branch on a cliff. And then we would take this stick and attach it to the end and run off the cliff and swing around the cliff. Kind of swing around. Maybe not like a cliff, but like a very big hill. And they usually had a stream at the bottom. So there was one time I kind of took a really big run. Ran as fast as I could and kind of jumped off this hill with the stick, and the stick broke. And I fell, maybe 20, 30 feet to the creek below and broke both my wrists at the same time. So I ended up going to the kind of Oshawa hospital, and there was different things that happened then, and ended up having to stay there for 3 weeks. And they gave me some really strong narcotics. So the first one they gave me was morphine, but then they upped the dosage, or upped the narcotic, I guess you call it, and gave me this narcotic called Demerol and Gravol. It's kind of this very strong drug. And I was 16 at the time, but I remember just waiting to get this Demerol and Gravol when I was there. And I'd be there kind of, when's it going to come? And it would start to wear off, and my arm would start to hurt, and I said, when's it going to come? In any event, they would give it to you, and I still remember very clearly this one time they gave it to me, and I was just lying there kind of high on Demerol and Gravol, and looking at this blank TV screen. And I was just like, oh, this is all right, just staring at this blank TV screen. And it's for this reason that people get addicted to drugs. Have this kind of experience in their mind where whatever they're looking at seems okay. Everything seems all right. Now, of course, if I kept taking Demerol and Gravol, then the effect that it has would get less every time. Until, basically you'd have to keep taking more and more to get a similar effect, and eventually no effect at all. But it's for this reason that people pursue the various things that they want in the world. Sometimes you'll see a movie where people find their kind of life partner. And looking for this life partner for a really long time, they finally find them, and they're like running through a field. And everybody's really happy. But what it doesn't usually show is people doing laundry and this kind of thing after that, which is, kind of getting groceries. They're, busy running through the field, and everything is good. And these are the kind of things that people's mind launches out towards. The kind of things that people desire to consume. And they desire to consume these things because when they're consuming them, their world seems bright. Whatever feeling comes from a consumption changes the world, changes the way they perceive it. Person who finally wins the lottery, their bus stop seems wonderful. Wherever they go seems wonderful for a little while, and then winning the lottery becomes normal. By the way, as an aside, they did a study on people who'd won the lottery. And they followed people who'd won the lottery and people who'd been in severe car accidents. So they tracked them, and after a year, the people who won the lottery were less happy than the people who've been in severe car accidents. Interesting, eh? And it's partially because they probably spent some of their money, but the people who got in severe car accidents were getting a little better. But in any event, this tells us a lot about the way that the mind operates, the way that it craves and the way that it desires to create a world. Create a world that's good, create a world that's bright, create a world that's happy. And this is the reason that people do whatever they do, why they pursue whatever they pursue, why they consume whatever they consume. People do these things because they want happiness and they don't want suffering. They want their worlds to be bright. So the first place that a person tends to look to make their world bright is through the eye, through the ears, through the nose, through the tongue, through the body, through the mind. And that's kind of our economic system is based on this. I think I might have said this before, but remember when I was in school, in kind of university, we'd take economics. They'd force every, I liked it, but you'd have to take economics. But they had this very kind of interesting thing, which in this subject called microeconomics, which is how people's minds operate. And they find that the more you consume of a particular thing, the less satisfying it gets. Yeah? So you eat one, juicy McDonald's double bacon cheeseburger, whatever it is, salad, whatever people like. You eat one, and it tastes really great. But then you eat the second one, okay, that's all right. Eat the third one, it's kind of starting to feel pretty bad. And if somebody forced you to eat a fourth one, they might become your enemy. You might start to really dislike them. And this is the way that craving operates in the mind. It operates in part on the basis of not having what we didn't have and getting what we didn't have before. And this is one of the reasons why people who win the lottery are less happy after a year than people who've just been in a car accident, lost some mobility. The person who's been in a car accident and loses mobility, after a year may have got some of that mobility back, may have regained some of it. So by contrast, their life's gotten better. The person who's won the lottery may have spent 10, 20, 30 million of their 80 million or whatever it may be. And so in that case, their life seems to have gotten a lot worse. And here's the trick of craving. Here's the trick of trying to create a world. In that the more a person consumes, the less satisfying that consumption becomes. And people know this. It's known in economics, and everybody knows it. Because everybody's tried to pursue things, tried to consume them. So this is one of the reasons why at the top of the Buddha's list of what causes suffering is delusion. It's what's called avijja. Avijja means not seeing, not being able to see. This not being able to see doesn't mean that we're blind. It means that a person isn't able to see what it is that truly makes them happy and what it truly is that makes them suffer. It means they're not able to see the Four Noble Truths. So just a couple of days ago, I was invited to give a talk at one place. Excuse me. And some of the people there, I think, were like businessmen or something like that, and were esteemed by the people in their community. And so I started giving a talk, and I was giving the talk on how money isn't that important. Not that it's not important, but I was giving the talk on how it's not going to lead to lasting satisfaction. And I kept giving the talk in this way, saying how now the West is much wealthier than it's ever been, how in my grandfather's time the West was almost like what we would call a very poor country, and kind of lived in a kind of old house with windows, and the air would blow through the house and you'd wake up with snow on you, and the house was heated with a wood stove and there was only one, and there was no running water, so everybody had to heat up the water and then bathe in this little, that wasn't that long ago, it was kind of the 1920s. in Canada. But what I said at this place was, although that's the case, my grandfather was not an unhappy man, not a, depressed, morose man, although his life was by no means easy. But I said, these days, Canada is much wealthier, many times wealthier than in the past, and yet depression and mental illness is a serious issue in Canada. And just by observing this, it's enough to see that these things that are external to us are not going to lead to a permanent type of happiness. And as I was giving the talk, several people got up and left. Kind of seemed very angry. What are you saying about money? Money is good. Actually, at the end of the talk, one person said, well, what do you mean? Money makes people happy everywhere. What are you saying? You shouldn't earn money? I said, well, the Buddha's recommendation is basically don't go into debt. But that was not the point of the talk. The point was that it won't lead to a permanent happiness. So right here is what you can see is this avijja operating. Avijja operates not just in the case of making people unable to see, but it operates in the way that it makes people love the things that cause them to suffer, to run after the things that cause them to suffer again and again and again, never seeing what it is, never escaping from that suffering. And it's because people love these things so much that when you talk about letting them go, some people get up out of the room and walk away, only to remain attached to the things that will cause them to suffer. It's the amazing thing about avijja. And everybody has heard cases of this. Everybody may have seen cases of this. Cases where a person knows it's not good to keep eating junk food, but can't stop. Cases where a person knows that their partner may be no good and cheating on them, but they still run back to that person. Cases where a person knows that their health is declining by, staying out partying all night, but they still stay out to party all night. This is the operation of avijja. This is the operation of attachment. This is the operation of craving, of clinging, of becoming, of birth, of suffering. So when a person wants to put an end to suffering, when a person wants their world to be bright, they have to learn to turn their minds away from being solely a consumer. And we do have to consume. We have to eat food to stay alive. We need a roof over our heads. It's good to have good friends, people who will help and support us on the path. But what we need to produce, to be happy, is to take an attitude of consumption and change it to an attitude of production. An attitude of consumption looks for happiness outside, looks for things through the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. It looks for things to eat. It looks for things to consume. And in consuming them, they become less and less satisfying. So that a person has to run after more, ever seeking more delight, but never finding satisfaction. But when a person comes to practice meditation, they learn to turn their mind in a different direction. They learn to turn their mind away from being a consumer to being a producer, to being somebody, from being somebody who eats to somebody who creates. And what we're creating here is happiness in our mind. When a person again and again learns to focus in on their breath, when a person again and again learns to practice generosity, when a person again and again learns to restrain themselves in morality, this is something that grasps the opposite way of the things that one consumes. It doesn't start big like a cheeseburger and grow less. It starts small and grows big. When a person practices meditation at first, it seems like nothing at all. But if a person continues to gain skill in it, they can experience bliss. They can experience feelings of happiness they'd never known before, never seen before. To the extent that one might think, if I could only get that back, I'd be happy in my dorm room in college. That's all that I need. So truly, the Buddha's teachings surpass in every way. For a person who wants their world to be bright, when they undertake the practice of morality, it starts small. It starts little. Instead of reaching out, looking at all the things around, what can I eat? The world starts to gradually grow lighter and lighter. And this is the lightness that comes when one sheds one's attachments. One sheds one's possessions, one's baggage. Here, not so much physical baggage, but the baggage of desire that a person carries around in their mind. And this is something that's hard to imagine until a person experiences it for themselves, until a person practices it for themselves, which is why it's very easy for avidya to creep in. Why it's very easy for ignorance to arouse fear, to arouse difficulty at giving up the things that should be given up, at practicing the things that should be practiced. But the nice thing about this is that the Buddha's teachings don't just have to be some rough slog. They're said to be something that's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Actually, there's a sutta where the Buddha says, bhikkhus, the life you live is like the lowest type of life. You kind of go around living off of scraps of alms food. You wear kind of robes made out of rags. You live at the foot of a tree, and yet nobody's forced you to do this. No kings have taken a stick and tell you if you don't do this, you're going to jail. No relatives have forced you to do this to support them. You do this of your own volition. You do this of your own free will. And this is because of the potential that exists in the Buddha's teachings. So when a person turns their mind away from consumption and towards production, and they start to see these things for themselves, it doesn't require verification from anybody else. It doesn't require somebody to tell you this is the way it is. When a person knows for themselves, that's their possession. That's their knowledge. That's something that can't be taken away from them. That's something that they know. So when a person gains this, that's when the world starts to become bright. So I remember one time when I was very young, again, kind of another little story. This is kind of very banal example, but when I first started to come to Buddhism, I was kind of in high school and had to do these correspondence courses. I was in what was called the double cohort at that time. So it was this time when they were getting rid of grade 13, and both grade 12 and grade 13 had to graduate together. So there was going to be double the number of people applying for university spots. And I was in the year right before that was going to happen. So I kind of spent a lot of high school just kind of playing around and decided finally that, I better get my act together and kind of, try and, go to school and get a career and all that. But unfortunately, I dropped math in grade 10, something like this. I kind of just didn't like it, didn't want to take it. But then realized that you needed math to, pretty much go into whatever I might have wanted to go into. So then I realized that, okay, it was the summertime and grade 12 started immediately after. It was close to the summertime. And I realized I need 2 maths to get this kind of grade 13 math to go to university. So I remember going to the guidance counselor's office and saying, I want to go to university, this is what I need. And she said, you have to take a correspondence course. And as she gave me the information for where the correspondence course was, this kind of after-school thing you take in a booklet, this other teacher came up and he said, I've never seen anybody finish those. I was like, well, thanks for raining on my parade. It's not very encouraging. But in any event, it was summertime and taking this kind of course, going through it, I realized that I was on a kind of deadline. And if I didn't finish this within the next 3 months, I wouldn't be able to get my OAC math and would be graduating with double the number of people and maybe need doubly as good the grades to get into the school I wanted to go to. But I remember coming back from my tutoring session one time, and at this time I just started going to a temple and meditating between study breaks, and was kind of walking up this bridge and realized that walking up that bridge, that was the kind of happiest that I'd ever been in my life. And so I kind of remember that very vividly. It's like, this is the happiest I've ever been, even amidst all this stress that was going on. Now, it wasn't the happiest I'd ever been because I'd never walked on that bridge before. I had walked on that bridge before many times. But it was the happiest I'd ever been because prior to Buddhism, I'd never turned my mind to production. I'd never turned my mind to generosity as a practice that I should cultivate. Not that I'd never given gifts, but never considered it as something that I should cultivate over and over again. I'd never turned my mind to morality as a priority that I should have. Not that I'd never been moral, but it had never been the priority. And I'd never turned my mind towards meditation. Never turned my mind towards a practice in training my mind. And for that reason, the world that I was experiencing on the bridge at that time was different than any world that I'd experienced before. So for a person who comes to the Buddhist teachings to practice, they have this opportunity. They have this chance to cultivate their mind. And this is something that doesn't require much at all. It doesn't require a big house. It doesn't require a fancy car. It doesn't require a gym membership, club med membership. It doesn't require a person to be well-known and famous. What it requires is the desire. The desire to cultivate generosity. The desire to cultivate morality. The desire to cultivate meditation. The desire to see how far it is that these things go. To see just what it is that they lead to. And it's for this reason that the Buddha says, test him. Test him like you would test gold in a fire. In other words, try as hard as you can to cultivate generosity. Try as hard as you can to cultivate mindfulness. Try as hard as you can to cultivate virtue and see if you can prove the Buddha wrong. See if what he's saying is true or not. So kind of another little story from my youth, kind of on that theme today. Still remember kind of the first time that I had encountered Buddhism. Prior to coming to Buddhism, I was kind of an atheist and didn't believe in any religion at all. And was that way for most of my life. I kind of figured there was nothing after death and everything was material. And felt that there was humongous holes in every religious ideology. Even had a kind of disdain towards most religions. But remember, very clearly, one time somebody gave me this book on Buddhism, and I had no intention to read it. And then one time I had nothing to read. So I was kind of there, it's like, well, either I sit here and stare at a wall, or read this book that, that's about the Buddhist teachings, and kind of. And so I remember I took up this book and read it, and it came to this portion that said, this is the central tenet of Buddhism. This is what all of Buddhism revolves around. And got to thinking to myself, well, I'm going to argue with this, and it's going to be proven totally wrong, totally full of holes, just like every other religious philosophy. But after I finished reading those 2 paragraphs, I was a Buddhist. So I was completely converted. And all throughout the practice of Buddhism, it's like this. It's not necessarily something we have to believe, it's something that we can know for ourselves. We're the ones who know our world. We're the ones who have the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. We're the ones who know what it's like to stand at that bus stop. We're the ones who know what it's like to walk over the bridge. And we're the ones who know, if we put the Buddhist teachings to the test, we see just how far they go. We see just how true they are. Because in the Buddhist teachings, there isn't a single falsehood contained. This is something that all of us can know for ourselves. Because the Dhamma is said to be something good. Something that's good in the middle, something that's good in the beginning, something that's good in the middle, and something that's good in the end. Because although the end of the world can't be reached by traveling, the end of the world is right here in this fathom-long body. Right here in our body and mind. And for those who practice, we can see just how bright we can make this world, just how good we can make it. It's something that we can know for ourselves. And for people who come to know this for themselves, they never regret it. They never forget it. It's something that's their possession, something that can never be taken away. So this is the power of the Buddha's teachings. This is the potential of practice. We can make our world bright. We can make our world good. Walking over a bridge, in a stressful situation, standing at a bus stop, walking to and from whatever place, eating, sleeping, our world becomes bright when our mind becomes bright. And through practice, that's how we make our mind bright. That's how we make our world bright. And the Buddha's teachings actually go even further than this. They have the potential to cross over to a happiness that doesn't change. And it's here, finding this happiness that doesn't change, that one finds where the world ends. One finds what's beyond the all. Okay? So I think leave that for reflection.